Is my screen visible to all of you? Okay, great. Also, please do not try to type side by side. You will miss important points, right? So carefully listen to what I say, right? So first thing is, let me create a project. Okay, so I've created a project called FSD here. Okay, all right. What I'm gonna do is, you can use VS Code or any IDE you want. I prefer my own. All right. So I've created a project directory, which is empty, right? The first thing I will be doing is I want to build a UI. Okay. So we need a plan first. Okay. Without a plan, you're planning to fail. So we'll build a plan first. So we're going to build a to-do web application. So I need to, visualize my UI. I need to see how it's going to look. First, I need, to pick a design. So let's find a good design from here. Mm, I'm looking for something simple yet neat. Mm, okay, this looks simple. We'll try this. Okay, so we'll bring something like this. Okay, so we'll have an input box at the top. Right below that, we'll have all our tasks. Okay, nice. So I'm gonna create a new folder inside my project directory. I'll call it UI. In case if you have any questions in between, ping me in the chat. Okay, I'm gonna create a new HTML file. I'll call that index. And I'm going to use something called, there are different CSS frameworks. Okay, I prefer Tailwind. Okay, I assume you guys have a little bit knowledge about HTML and CSS, so I'm just skipping the explanation here. See, Abhishek, we are learning Angular because we are going to learn mean stack today. Okay, what does mean stack stand for? Mongo, Express, Angular, Node.js. These are the four technologies we'll be learning in mean stack. There is also MERN stack. Okay, MERN, which is also one of the popular stack. In MERN stack, instead of Angular, you'll be learning React.js, right? So today we're picking mean stack. That's why we learn Angular today. Right. So let me just go ahead. I'm gonna build the container now. Okay, it's working. Okay, 1.2. Right, we have the division exactly at the center of screen. You can also add a margin top. All right, okay. Okay, all right. Mm, okay, good. So I'm gonna set up a header now, right? Okay, all right, right. After that, we are going to have an input box. Okay, so we need to beautify this one. Mm, okay, okay, good. Now let's add a border to it. Okay, all right, okay. So I can type my task here. Please don't do that. No, this is disturbing, please. Annotation. All right, okay. Mm, Can you all hear now? Am I audible? Raja, if you're not able to hear, please reconnect. So we have the input box. Now our design is going to be at the bottom. So that is going to be a list of items that I'm going to add. All right. So I want to see, let's get inspiration from somewhere. Yes. Okay, I think I'll pick this one. We'll have a title and the description at the bottom, right? Okay, now head over here. I'm going to create a new box. I'll call that task items. Right under that, I'm going to have an ordered list, then a list of items. Then that would, or rather, consider class. Again. Okay, so this is how it's going to look. Title and description. Mm, let's add some design to it. Okay, so okay, so okay, too much space. Okay, so you almost have it. Mm, okay. Mm, all right. So okay, so we have a design ready. But the thing is, we need to have a button at the right hand side where the user can mark it as completed, right? So let's create that. Mm, okay. Mm, let's call it one moment. Okay, that's I think okay, all right. So now on the right hand side we have a checkbox. When the user clicks on the checkbox, or we can also have a button over there. When the user clicks on it, we mark it as completed item, right? Okay, now perfect. So we have the design, we have it simple. So the thing is now, uh, take my passport and visa copy. And if I hit enter, it should immediately be added to the bottom, right? It should immediately be added to the bottom of the, added to the task list here. Okay, that is the objective now. Now the question is, what would be the title and what would be the description, right? Title we can have, um, or we can have it like this. Let's say that uh, passport. Come on, don't do this. Just give me a minute. If there's any admin here, could you please disable annotation for other users? All right. So we could say, the title is going to be passport and visa, and I'm going to use a pipe symbol here to separate my description and passport. Okay. Take passport and a visa and keep it safe in your handbag. So passport and visa is going to be a title, and this part after this pipe symbol, okay, this is the pipe symbol. After this pipe symbol, we have the description. So programmatically, I'm going to split this into two, identify the title, description, and add it to the list. Okay, so that is my objective here. I'm going to keep it that way itself, right? Instead of this checkbox, I'm going to add a button here, right? So 12 buttons. Okay. So we have a ready-made button. We can copy this and we need a check mark. Can just copy and put it here, right? Perfect. Now we have our button, right? So our design is ready. Okay. The next thing is to implement JavaScript here. Okay. Now let me create a new file in my project. I'm going to create a new file called app.js. Okay. This is where I'm going to write my JavaScript. I'm going to write one line of code. Let's say console log to do web app. And here in the script, I need to include my JS file, right? App.js file. I need to test if it works. So we have a beautiful tool called as developer tools in all the major browsers. Right click on the page, click on inspect, you'll see your developer tools. I'm going to switch to the console tab. Now it says to do web app. And on the right hand side, it says it came out from app.js line number 1. If I click on that, it will tell me where it loaded from, which means our app.js is properly working now, right? Okay, switch back, right? Switching over to app.js file. Now I need to capture this one, right? I need to capture the enter key. So our plan was to what? I say hello and hit enter here. The moment I hit the enter key on my keyboard, the application should understand I'm trying to insert a new web app, new task. How do I identify that? So in my input field here, right? This is where, right? This is where I'm actually typing. There I'm going to write a function called on key up. On key up is one of the attribute of HTML. So the browser will keep listening for every keystroke on the keyboard. So what should happen on key up? I'm going to call a customized function. Okay. Watch key is my function name. Watch key is a function name. I'm going to write this function in my JavaScript. say function watch key, right? You see what happens now. I'm gonna log key pressed. Okay, I say key pressed. Refresh. Okay, see, you see, as I start typing, it's actually logging it every time. The number increases on the left hand side, which means that the key press is now identified by the browser and it is passing to the JavaScript. Once we have this in the JavaScript, we have full control over that input box. We can extract text from it, we can clear the text, we can remove the text box, right? Now I need to tell what kind of key has been pressed. So I just passed $event. $event is the key here, right? You need to pass $event here so that whatever key was pressed on the keyboard, this entire information is passed on to the watch key function here. I need to capture that. Okay, I'll say, I'll call it key data. Let's log it to the output and see what we get from there. Now, I say I'm going to press A. Okay, it says event is not defined. Not this. Give me a moment. Okay, let's try. Okay, so it was simply dot only event. We should not use a dollar in front of it. Okay, but in Angular we use dollar. All right, fine. So I'm gonna press the alphabet A. Immediately we got the entire alphabet information here. If you see, there are a lot of properties attached to it. We are specifically looking for this key code. Okay, key code 65. 65 is what? It's the ASCII value. ASCII value of small a is 65, right? And Z is, I think it's 92, 91. I think Z is 91. And then capital A starts from 97 and so on, right? So it's the ASCII value. So the ASCII value of enter key is 13. Now I'm gonna press enter key here. It gave the output. Let's look at the key code, the 13. So when I get the key code as 13, it means the user has pressed the enter key. Okay, fine. So I'm just going to do an if statement here. If key data dot key code is 13, in that case, add to tasks, right? Let's test it. Take my passport. Now I'm going to press enter key and there we go. It says add to task. Instead of add to task, we need to extract the text that the user typed. To extract the text, what do we need? We need to capture this element here. So I'm going to pass an ID saying that I'll call it task input. And in JavaScript, I can easily extract it. Const task is equal to document dot get element by ID task input dot value. Now I have already extracted my task. Let's test it. Oh, I'm sorry. And I'm going to hit enter and there we go. Now we have extracted whatever the user typed. Perfect. Okay. Now I am going to bind it to the UI. Okay. Yes, Subhashini. Do you have a question? No? Okay. If you have a question, you can post it in the chat. I'll be watching it. So I have my task here. The next operation is to add it to the UI where at this point, right? At this point. So basically, what you can do is we can write the extract logic, okay? And binding to the UI, we can do it in Angular, okay? So it'll be like we have looked at both JavaScript and Angular together, right? I'm going to write the splitting task in JavaScript and then create an Angular application, move our code and design everything over there, okay? Fine. Now, our initial idea was to add a pipe symbol to separate the title and the description, okay? Okay, right. Now I'm going to press enter, and there we have it. We have this pipe symbol. Now we can use this pipe symbol to identify the title and description separately, right? That's what I'm going to do. So I have task here. Let's say const uh, data is equal to task.split exactly at the pipe symbol, right? So I have my entire task stored in the task variable. Now I'm going to use the task variable and use a split method on it. Split method will look for a search key, search string here. So it will, when it finds a pipe symbol, it will split the text into two parts and put them in an array. Now let's see how it looks in the output. Okay, I say passport, take your passport. Okay, I'm gonna hit enter now. Now there we go. Now we have array of items. The first one is the passport, which will be our title, and the second one is going to be our description, title and description, right? I can do an array destructuring here directly. I'd write it like this. Let's say title and description. This is a shorthand, okay? Shortcut. Some text, and then after a pipe, I have another one, right? So I have the title at the top. So this method is called as array destructuring, okay? If you go to the interview, they ask you these questions. Instead of, see, this could also be written as const data is equal to task dot split of like this, and then you have an array, and then you create a title variable, data of 0, and then your description is sitting at position 1. Instead of writing this in 3 lines, I've completed that in 1 line itself. Okay, this method is called array destructuring. Right, so we have the title and description. What next? Next is to bind it to the UI. Okay, cool. Now we'll stop JavaScript here. I'm going to create a new project in Angular. Okay, so I'll give a little bit of gist about Angular. Okay, see, Angular is built with TypeScript. What is TypeScript? TypeScript is a separate programming concept which uses types to restrict variables. For example, if you have learned Python, C and all, right? In Python, you do not have types. You can simply declare a variable, you can store numbers, variables, boolean, whatever you want there, right? But in C, Java and all, you'll have to define the type of variable you're going to save. For example, let's say in JavaScript, you just create a variable and you say John. You say John. In TypeScript, you need to define the type of variable you're going to store there, John. Okay, in TypeScript, this is how you do it. Otherwise, you'll have a problem because you say name is a string, but if you try to store an integer there, TypeScript will throw an error. It will say that you're making a mistake. So basically, TypeScript is a strictly typed language that will make you avoid making that will make you avoid making mistakes. You will not make any mistakes. If you make any mistake in the logic here or syntax here, the compilation will fail. That is the beauty of TypeScript. So Angular uses TypeScript to run the framework. All right. So just keep this in mind. That's enough. When you learn more, you will eventually understand why it is using TypeScript. Fine. Right. So Angular is a framework by Google. Okay. One moment. Okay. Angular is a framework by Google. Google is backing it up. It's a very strong framework, just like a React. React is backed by Facebook. So Google uses Angular to build all its web applications, including Gmail, Google AdSense, right? Sanjeev Ram. Okay, all right. See, uh, JavaScript is very plain programming language, right? So we had this example. You declare a variable, you can name it John, and in that name itself, you can save a number 100, and then you can save a boolean, and then you can replace the value with an array. JavaScript does not have a problem. It will keep on replacing values. But in case of TypeScript, when you declare a variable, you have to define a type of variable you're going to store. The moment you say string here, you can only store a string. You cannot store a number, right? And further replacement will throw an error. You cannot say, okay, once you define the type of string, you cannot store a number here. You can only store strings like this. You can have to wrap that in a single quote or a double quote. It becomes a string. That is the only difference between TypeScript and JavaScript. There is no logical differences in programming. It's only the features and functionalities that TypeScript offers us so that we do not make any mistakes in our application, right? Now, I said Angular uses TypeScript to run its framework. Okay. So Angular is backed by Google. Okay. There are continuous support coming out from Google. So it's one of the safest frameworks to use till date. Okay. And all the websites of Google are built with Angular framework. So it is safe for us to build huge applications that can scale to any extent. All right. So in order to run Angular, you need Node.js as well. So head over to Node.js website, go to the download section, and always download the LTS version, long-term support. Okay. 20.1 is the current. It is still in development mode. It has the latest features, but it might have bugs. Your application might break somewhere. So to build production level applications, or your client level applications, always download the LTS version. Not only Node.js, any software, always use the LTS version. Okay, so download and install it. Once you've installed it, you can open your command prompt, right? And there you can type node minus v. If you are able to see the version number, it means Node.js is properly installed. Along with that, you will have to check one more command, npm node package manager minus v. If that gives a version number, npm also is properly installed. Okay, fine. What next? Next, just head over to the documentation, getting started, setup. Right under the setup, you will have instructions on how to install it. There we go. Just copy this command and paste it in your command prompt and hit enter. As soon as I hit enter, there'll be a long list of downloads happening. And then Angular's CLI will be installed on your machine. Now, what is CLI? There are two things in the software industry. One is GUI, the other one is CLI. Okay. Could somebody tell me if MS-DOS is an operating system or not? MS-DOS. People that use computer 15, 20 years back. Are you here? Nope. MS-DOS. Microsoft Windows is an extension of MS-DOS. MS-DOS was the first operating system released by Microsoft. It was character user interface. It will be like this. It will be like this. No mouse, only keyboards, right? If you want to list out all the directories, you do this command. If you want to copy, use a cp command. If you want to paste, you use a move command, right? If you want to see the size of each files, ls minus l. You will not see any icons, no color, only black and white. So these kind of systems are called as CLI systems, command line interface. You manage the entire operating system using commands only. This is CLI. And then advancements came, they bought the GUI with mouse, keyboard icons, a little bit of color here and there, funda kind of thing and all. So that thing, right? This one, what we see on my Mac, is a graphical user interface, GUI, right? Clear two systems. Now we have installed CLI here, command line interface. One moment. Okay, now what happens is once the Angular installation is complete, you need to type ng and hit enter. Now you should see this kind of thing. You can type ng minus minus help. It will show a list of commands, which means that your Angular CLI has been properly installed. ng stands for Angular hereafter. Okay, anywhere you see ng is Angular. Inside the code, in the CLI, in the terminal window, wherever ng is Angular. Fine. Now you can see a list of commands here. There's something called ng new and a name. So it says that it creates a new Angular workspace for us. Okay. So I'm just heading over to the desktop. Inside my FSD directory, I'm gonna say ng new to do. Okay. So in my FSD directory, I'm gonna write ng new to do. That should create a new to do project for me in Angular. It says, do you want Angular routing? Currently, it's a little bit advanced concept. I'm gonna say no. I'll stick to CSS framework. Now it is creating a boilerplate for me. What is a boilerplate? Boilerplate will have the least bit of code for you to get started. You don't have to set up the framework from scratch. You don't need to understand how Angular works. So it will create a decent set of files. The moment you run the application, you will see a good output. That is boilerplate. Now, if I open my project here, and then you can see that under FSD, I also have my to-do directory, right? So if you see, there are different varieties of files and directories. All I would care about is this src directory. That is where I will write my code, source directory. Okay, expand src. You'll have a different set of files. We'll not go into detail about that, but we'll only talk about one important component. Angular is an MVC, okay, model view controller. You guys will eventually learn in the future, right? So it's an advanced concept that makes the programming easy and scaling the application very easy, right? So we'll just care about this app component file. You can see that there is a pre-written code here. I want to run this application. So in my terminal, I'm going to write, I'll first navigate to my to-do project. Inside the to-do project, I'm going to write ngserve. Ngserve will run my application. So basically what happens, all the TypeScript code inside the framework will be converted to JavaScript, and then this JavaScript will load it into my browser. Because TypeScript cannot directly run in the browser. No browser understands TypeScript. Browsers only understand JavaScript. So there is a necessity to convert my TS file, TypeScript file into a JavaScript file, and then it will load into the browser. For that to happen, you just write ngserve and hit enter. Now the compilation is happening. Let's wait for a moment. Right. So it says my application is running on port number 4200 in localhost. Click on that. There we go. We have the basic or the default Angular's landing page. Okay, this is what we have. Now we can replace this with our design. So let me head over to my previous project UI. I'm gonna copy. Let me Copy the script and put this in the index directory. After that, my HTML code will go inside my app.html file, app component file, right? And I saved it. Okay, some issues here. What is the code only? Okay, it's actually not able to identify the Tailwind CSS. That's the issue. Okay, so Angular has its own method of implementing Tailwind. We need to install it. Let's look for the documentation. Okay, so they're asking us to run these commands in our Angular project. Let me stop the project. You can press Control C to stop your project. Okay, for that, put in this. And after that, they're asking us to copy this in the Tailwind config file. Okay, so let me just copy everything. It says there's a Tailwind configuration file. There we go. So right under this content, I'll have to copy this line, right? Perfect. Save. Now I'm gonna run the project. Okay, great. If I refresh now, something wrong. One moment. Oh, the copied only. Okay, Tailwind still didn't work. Okay, I need to add these as well. So it says that I need to add inside src style CSS file. Let me go paste it over there, here, and save. Let's try again. Perfect. Now Tailwind has been installed in Angular application. We are completely into Angular. I'm going to close this previous one, okay? All right. Now we have it. Okay. Now the question is, what is the advantage of using Angular? Why not write pure JavaScript? See, Angular is a framework in an enterprise application, right? You'd be asked to perform a variety of operations, like the CRUD operations, create, read, update, delete. You will have huge forms, hundreds of fields, right? You need to set up validation for each field. Suppose in the place of age, somebody is typing their name. Age is a number, name is a character. You cannot capture that and put it into database. That's an error. You will have to tell the user that your age is invalid. Or if you're giving a username for sign up or an email address for sign up, you'll have to validate against the database, show an error message to the user. There are hundreds of complexities when you do it with JavaScript. Eventually, you can actually build an application, but you will need to write a lot of code, spend a lot of time in testing, development, and code migration is very difficult. There are a lot of challenges here. That is why we stick to frameworks. Frameworks are secured. They have a lot of tools that can do work in shorthands. Suppose if you're writing a JavaScript application in 1 hour, you can write the same application in 10 minutes in Angular or React. That is the benefit. It has a lot of shorthand shortcuts that you can use. It also has pre-built functions inside. right? It has a lot of pre-built function. If you want to make an API call, it's very difficult in JavaScript, right? But in Angular and React, it has built-in methods. You just call that method and you make an API call in just 1 or 2 lines. If you write that in JavaScript, it's going to be 10 to 15 lines. That is the main difference. Okay, fine. Now let's head over to the design again. So this is my design, right? I have title, description, and in the browser you also see the hard-coded values. Whatever we hard-coded, it's appearing here. Now the question is, I need to convert JavaScript into Angular version. So basically, if you see, I have this key up method that will call the watch event, right? Watch key method. Here in Angular, it's a little bit different. I'm just going to say within parentheses, I write key up. Key up will identify for any key changes, keystrokes in the keyboard, and say, let's say watch key. And here I need to pass dollar $event. That's how Angular works. Okay. And you can see that I have HTML, CSS, and TS files, most importantly. TS file is where I'll write my logic. All right. So I'm going to write my function here. The function is watch key. I'll say data. See, now Angular is complaining the compilation failed here. It says failed to compile. Why? Because it says that I need to define a type for this data variable that I'm capturing from the UI. I don't know what kind of data it is, so I'll simply say any. I'll just have a colon here and say it could be any type. Don't worry about it. Now the error is gone. If I save, the compilation will be a success now. There we go. Now I'm gonna start typing here. As I type, I'm getting the value. The output is same as you see in the JavaScript. We are looking for key code here. The moment the key code is 13, I will add my task to the UI. If data.keycode is 13, so okay, write the logic to append to UI. This is where I'm going to write my logic. And in JavaScript, this double slash means comment lines. This won't be compiled by the compiler. Okay, so it will be ignored. This is for a reference. Now the logic here is when this course starts. Somebody is asking when this course starts and it's time. See, the full details will be shared in the group by somebody. Okay. So now my thing is, I will have multiple items, which means that I will have multiple items like this. The UI, if you see, I copied the wrong thing. One moment. Okay, one moment. One moment. Okay, so we'll have multiple tasks like this, right? So we need to have an see now you can imagine if there are more than one items I need to handle, I can group all of them inside an array, right? That is what I'm gonna do. Let me undo this design. In the TS file, I am going to have a global variable called as task list. It is of type any array, and by default, I'm defining it as an array, right? See, if you do not understand this code, it's totally fine now. You're only trying to understand what full stack development is. Don't worry about this syntaxes. If you're going to join the full course, I will explain everything in detail. Right now, just watch how it works. Okay, having a task list variable. It's an empty array. There's nothing inside it, right? Now, I am also going to extract the text that the user types here. So here in JavaScript, we used ID, but in this case, you're going to use something called as ng model for two-way binding. Okay, two-way binding is a beautiful concept in Angular. and I'll call that as task input. In order for this ng model to work, I will have to import few modules. Forms module to import that, inject that into my application. These are called as dependency injection. Okay, a little bit advanced concepts. Okay, all right. So the task input is not there. I need to define my task input. Is of type string, default empty. Right. Okay, the compilation is successful. Now to demonstrate how two-way binding works, I'm going to output this in the UI itself, the task input, right? You see what happens now. As I start typing, I'm able to echo that into the UI itself. This is two-way binding. As you make changes to a specific variable, that variable will get affected in real time. This is called as two-way binding in Angular. Okay, this is the most important feature, and it is the one that makes it outstanding from other framework is its two-way binding feature. This is the one, right? I have binded some variable to my input where I can type, right? And that variable is again echoed somewhere in the application. It's actually watching for changes in real time. Got it? Okay. Somebody just maybe okay, just give me a moment. Thank you for reminding. One sec. Okay. All right. Okay. So which means that I can use this task input at any time in the flow of my program. So here, when the input is 13, I can directly log my task input variable here, right? So I say this dot task input. Why? In JavaScript, in any class is an object. Okay, which means that in any class you define variables, it should be accessed using the dot operator. This will refer to your current class app component. Dot will refer to all the objects that you created, the functions and the global variables. Okay, so that is why I ended up using this dot task input. Now let's see what happens. I say passport, take your passport. I'm gonna hit enter now. There we go. The moment I hit enter, I'm able to extract this task input variable. Now, if you remember, we did array destructuring, right? We had this title and description. Then I did task input dot split, split at the pipe. Now I have my title and the description together. Let's test it again. Passport. Take the passport. Enter. There we go. We have two separate variables now, title and description. Now I can use it to bind it into the UI. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create an object and push it inside the array. So I say this dot task list dot push. The task list now is an empty array. I'm going to push data into it. What kind of data? I'm going to create an object. I say title and the description together. Let's log it to the output and see what happens. This dot task list. There we go. And right after storing it here, I'm going to clear my input. So I say this dot task input is equal to empty string, right? So let's say passport, take my passport. Okay, I'm gonna hit enter. Now you can see that this is an array. The array is what? Task list. And there is one item with title and description. I'm gonna add another one. Let me clear this out. Let's say baggage pack your bags and hit enter. And now the array has two items. The first one is the passport, the second one is the baggage, which means I'm actually maintaining all the data in a temporary storage inside the browser itself in a variable, right? Also, you can notice that the task here is cleared immediately. If you had to write this in JavaScript, it should at least take 15 to 20 lines. But rather here it took only one, two, three, four, max five, 6 lines. That's it. That is the difference. That is the advantage of doing a two-way binding, right? Now, my task is over. Nothing to do here. Now, this task list array, right, that's holding all the task items, it can be directly bound to the UI. How do I do that? Now, our design starts from where? Here, right? This is our task list design. All I'm going to do is I'm going to run a loop on this. Okay, I'm going to use an Angular directive called ng equal to, watch carefully, let task of task list. Task list is my array, right? Task list is the array that is holding all my tasks. So what happens is ng4 will run a loop over the array, and every time it loops over a specific object in the array, it will store that into the task variable. Now I can simply do task.title and task.description. Sorry. That is all I need to do, right? Now you see how it behaves. Initially, we have nothing, right? The array is empty, so there's no design here. I'm going to write first, let's say passport and visa. Split that with a pipe. Make sure to take all passenger passports and visas and keep them safe in your hand baggage. Hit enter. The moment you hit enter, it immediately renders on the UI. Fine. Now again, uh, baggages, right? Uh, make sure to pack all baggages the prior night. There we go. Do you understand how it works? How two-way binding works? You're only appending data to the array, but the UI is actually watching for changes in the array. As soon as a new item is pushed inside that array, it will immediately re-render this entire loop. Okay? See, pipe is only used for our reference. See, for example, let's say I say book Uber at 5 a.m. and hit enter. There's no description here. Can you see? Only title here. So instead of what I can do is book Uber at 5 a.m. and I need a description. So I split that with a pipe. Okay. Um, book Uber around 5 a.m. Otherwise, I might miss the flight. There we go. Now we have the description. This is user-defined logic. I could have two different fields instead, one for title, one for description. But I wanted to manage this with one single field. So I used a pipe symbol to split the string here. If you see the logic, the TS file that I wrote, see, I'm actually task input is my input, where I use the title and description together. Then I'm splitting that using the pipe symbol. So it will break the string into two parts. The string before your pipe symbol is your title. After the pipe is your description. I'm storing them into different variables. And then I'm pushing it into the array. That array will be re-rendered in the UI using ng4. That's all. Any questions? Anybody else? No. Fine. All right. So our UI is almost ready. The next thing is to make this button work. I could also show number of items that are pending for me to complete, right? Thank you so much. No problem. Now, In the design, I could, let's say, beside this to-do web app, I want to show the number of items pending on me. So here, would it be good if I say 3 items pending? Let's see how it looks. Variation. Let me put slow today. Yeah, just give me one moment. Uh-huh. Something is eating up all the memory. One moment. Okay. Um, all right, we'll continue like this itself. Oh, okay, freed up. All right. Okay. Uh, all right. Okay, fine. So the design actually looks okay to me, right? So here I'll show the number of, maybe I could change the color of it. Okay, I think this color is good. We can change it anytime you want. Okay, so as I keep adding tasks, the counter here must increase. It must keep on increasing. Okay. Priya Sudan, if you use any other symbol other than pipe, it will work. You can use any symbol you want. You just need to use that symbol as a separator here. You can use a hyphen, right? You can use a comma here. But I think because see, you will use hyphen and commas in a regular sentence. Pipe is the uh, odd one out. Nobody uses pipe, so I use pipe here. You can use an at symbol to separate your string, right? You can try with various symbols you want. Yes, I will start this course from scratch, including HTML and CSS. Right. Fine. Coming back. Mm, okay. So we have everything now. Instead of just hard coding it to number three, I should use my task list variable, right? One more thing, this double curly braces are used to output the TypeScript variables here in the UI, that's all. Okay. It's a templating engine of Angular. So I say task list dot length, which means that it will read the number of items inside your array and show that number here, right? Okay. If I go here, initially it is 0. You can see that there are 0 items pending on me. So first one is I keep adding items. Okay, secure your documents and hit enter. The moment I added here, it incremented the counter to 1 because here we are actually watching for the number of items inside the array using the length property of the array, right? Second item, say hello, and there we go. We have an increment here, right? So basically, you see, we did not write extra logic here. We are only adding items to the task list. As we keep adding items, we are using the same variable to perform different operations. This is the advantage of using a two-way binding. All right? Very clean code, very neat code. You can also add multiple logics in the UI. For example, see, the moment I reload this application, you will see a 0 which looks very ugly. There's no point in saying 0 items pending on you when there's no item at all, right? It does not make sense. So I would rather like to hide it. So I say ngf command, angular f command, This will show only if task list dot length is greater than 0. If there are more than 0 items, only in that case it will show up. Otherwise, it will hide itself. This entire span tag will hide itself. There we go. You see, it's gone. The moment I add the first item, it will appear. When the item is gone, it will disappear. Right? So all good. The last thing that we need to do is click on this checkbox or this button here, right? That will make the task disappear, which means we consider that as a completed item. We'll remove that from the array itself. Now I'm going to add a click event. Okay, I'm going to add a click event on it. Okay, I say mark as completed. I need to say mark as completed. So I'm going to write this function here in my TS file. Now what will this do? It will actually pick up the specific task from the array and remove it from that index. So basically arrays are accessed using index, right? So index starts from 0 and it goes on 1, 2, 3, 4, and so on, right? So what I need to do is I need to pass the index of the task, right? How do you get the index? In this ng for itself will give us this one. So I say let I equal to index value. So index is given by the ng for itself. That will tell which iteration it is currently running. So we're capturing that iteration number and storing inside I, right? For example, we can also add it here. I say I space title. You see how it behaves now, right? So it says first item. There you go. It says the index is 0. Second item, index is 1, right? So I can add numbers here. I just say I plus 1. So the first item will be number 1 now. You see, 1, 2, 3, and so on. So we can actually make use of the features provided by ng4. So I'm taking the index. So with this index, I'll be able to delete everything. So I'm calling this mark as completed function. And inside that, I'm passing the current index number. Whichever button I'm clicking, I'm going to pass that index number inside the array. Head over here, capture the index value that I'm passing from there. And I'm okay. This is going to be a number, right? It's of type number. This dot task list dot splice method of the array. Okay, in JavaScript, you have something called splice, which is used to remove a specific index from the array. It takes two parameters. The first one is the index number that we got from the UI, and how many items should be removed from there? Only one item to be removed, right? Let's test it out. Okay, I'm gonna add the first item, passport. Uh, Secure the passport, visa, takes photocopies of your visa, documents. Do not forget your original Aadhaar. So we have three items. Now I'm gonna click on this visa, second item, okay? It's gone. The moment I clicked on the visa, it's gone. How did it go? So we have this button here, right? On click of the button, we are calling this mark as completed function along with the index number of the array. So that at that point the index of pass visa was 1, right? 1 was index number. We are passing 1 here. That 1 goes inside this method, and then we're using the splice method of the array to remove that specific index. Once the index is gone, this ng4 will rerun the task list. At this point in time, we only had two items in the array. And that is how you end up seeing only two items. If I remove passport, it's gone. And then finally, you can also see the numbers updating here. I'm going to click on the last item as completed. The number itself is gone. Was it clear? Any questions? No questions. Okay, right. Fine. Okay. So the UI is done. Let's touch a little bit. I don't know if we can cover database today because database, the setup itself needs 15-20 minutes. And then we'll have to make the connection. That'll be too much for today. What I'll do is let's make an API call. Okay. Let's from the browser, we'll make an API call to the backend and receive data back to the browser. That's one thing we can see. For this, we'll be using Node.js, which is a middleware that belongs to the backend layer. All right. Uh, okay. Right. For that, I need to create a new Node.js project. Okay. Let me create a new directory inside my FST workspace, and we'll call that as middleware. Right. And in my terminal, I'll navigate inside my middleware directory. Now, to create a new Node.js project, you need to use your command line. We already have this npm, right? All you need to do is npm space init, npm space init command. That will initialize a new project. It'll ask a few questions. What do you want to name your project? I'll leave it as middleware by default. Version number, I'll leave it default. Description, I'll say sample API project. Entry point, I'll be using app.js file. No test commands, no git repository, no keywords. I'll call it open source. License is ISC. So it's asking me to confirm. I say okay. Immediately, that would create a new file inside my middleware directory called package.json. This is the most important file. If there is no package.json, there is no project. I'll tell you why. Now, in the main stack, E stands for Express. What is Express? Express.js. Express is a minimal and flexible Node.js web application framework that provides a robust set of features for web and mobile applications. Basically, it's used to build APIs, right? For example, see, initially there were only two-tier architectures. Two-tier, meaning that, all right? So there were two-tier architectures, meaning that, let's say that somebody built an application with Java, with okay, somebody built an application, lovely application with Java. One good example is Facebook. So Facebook was built in the era of two-tier applications. The technology was not much evolved as we have it now, right? This is how they built it. That was in PHP, okay? They built Facebook with PHP. Even today, a lot of pages in Facebook are PHP, including settings pages. And then they had this database. We'll call this a database. Okay, they use MySQL database initially, right, to start with. So we had two layers here. Okay, the we'll call it a presentation layer, and this one was the database layer. Only two layers. Database was on a different server, and your entire application was sitting on one server. Problem was, the moment Facebook decided to build the mobile application, it's very slow. Okay, someday Facebook wanted to build a mobile application. Problem they had was, for example, let's say that this was the index page. They had this page called index.php. So what happened? In one single PHP file, they wrote all their business logic. For example, let's say authentication, login, username and password is given. User is trying to log in, right? Your HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, all are bound together in one single file. So when they use mobile app, they had to rewrite the entire logic. Entire Facebook was built for mobile application. Why? Because they built it with two-tier architecture, right? Now imagine what would have happened if Facebook built it in three-tier architecture. Let's say that the layer is middleware layer here, okay? And Facebook, they created another layer called middleware, which only had your PHP logic, okay? Then how would this front-end website would behave? This will only be index.html file, no more PHP, because PHP is separated. The business logic is taken out from there. So how would that behave? It will make an API call, right? So you will only get the username and password in the browser. With JavaScript, you will send that information to PHP. PHP will then process the information, check it with MySQL database to see if the user exists, and give response back to the browser, success or failure or whatever it is. Now, if you want to build a mobile app, you will only build the UI here. You will only capture the username and password, make an API call to, and then you will make an API call to the middleware. Tomorrow, if you want to have a desktop application, you only build the UI, make use of the same code. Got it? Guys, any questions here in three-tier architecture? Yes, no? Come on, I need one answer. Anybody? Yes, no? Clear or not? Right. Okay, good. So basically, we are separating our business layer, all your security, business logic, encryption, decryption, digital certificates, your payment gateways, right? All of these things will go inside your middleware. It is separated from that layer. So this is layer number two, which is your middleware. Now we have three-tiered architecture applications. This is the benefit of having it. So Express.js, what we built here is a middleware that will let you write APIs. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. Let's see how to install it. So this is the command. You copy inside your middleware directory. Now watch carefully. There is nothing called as dependencies here. As I install this one, the package JSON file will be affected. Now you see that it added something called dependencies, and it is tracking which version of Express it's using. Clear? So you will have many dependencies in your application. For example, if you want to implement the Google Pay UPI, there is a package for Google Pay UPI. You will have to install it here. So immediately that will be added as a dependency along with Express. Likewise, other dependencies as well. Okay. Now, so we have this package JSON file. And you also notice that we have a node modules here. So node modules are the dependencies. See, we just installed Express. So Express library is downloaded here. We can then use it. All right. So likewise, we have a lot of dependencies to run a Node.js application. Everything is installed here. Fine now. What next? I'm going to create my main file, app.js file. I'm going to create a JavaScript file, app.js, right? And I need to copy my boilerplate code here. So just go to getting started. And here, that's it. Copy and paste. We'll have our middleware API up and running. Okay. So I'm setting the port number as 3000, right? And just save it. I need to run it like this, node space app.js. Okay, it says example app running on port number 3000. Let's see if it works. Localhost. There we go. It says hello world, right? For this, after your domain name, if you have label things, get, uh, I'll say slash greeting. Okay. Let's say rest.send good afternoon, people, and save. So I just need to, right? So I can also say slash greeting now. We'll say good afternoon, people. Likewise, I can create several URLs for me. Each URL perform well different operation. For example, if you want to log in, you can create a login URL for registration, for OTP generation, for fetching a profile, updating your profile. There could be hundreds of URLs in your entire application, right? So Express.js is a framework that helps you write these kind of APIs, right? You can also send the response in the JSON format. For example, res.json, I think, yes, JSON. It's a greeting, good afternoon, audience, uh, full stack, developers, and so on. And I'm gonna refresh this page. Now it gives me as a JSON response. I can use this in my to-do application, right? So basically, what's the idea here is I create a new task with the help of JavaScript. I'll be sending my data to this backend, right? This service will in turn save the data into the database, get a response back, and tell the UI that your information has been successfully saved in the database, right? This is the actual end-to-end flow in an entire application, be it any application. Facebook. In Facebook, what do you do? It's a very complicated application. You create a post that saves in the database, and you get a success message. You immediately see your whatever you wrote as a post in your Facebook wall, right? Everything in this world is a CRUD operation. Create, read, update, and delete. These are the four major operations everybody performs. There's nothing else, right? Sorry. Okay. So this is the overall idea. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna write an API to get my, let me remove all of this. I'm gonna write an API to uh, get the data that I just posted, means creating a task. Okay, it will give back the response to me. So app.get, I say slash process task is my API URL. So it will have a request and response class, and I'd say res dot send back req dot. Uh, I forgot how to extract query parameters. Maria. Okay, all right. So as req dot query, right? So let's say, so what is the URL? Process minus task question mark. Let's say task is equal to passport. Okay, so it's able to extract the query parameter that I'm passing to it and give me as a JSON response. I'm going to use this one. So I'll actually store const task is equal to req.query. From the request headers, I'm extracting my query parameters being passed from the UI. I'm going to split that. Say const title description is equal to task.split. Split exactly at the pipe symbol, right? And I'm going to give it as a JSON, the title and description, right? This is what my API is going to do. So basically, the splitting logic was in the UI. I'm going to do that in the backend, right? Okay. Now before that, there are a few configurations that needs to be done. Okay, I'm going to do that. System's very slow. All right, the backend is ready. Uh, 3000 as a new user. Okay, I'm running on port 3002. You see now the backend, we should not disturb it. If I refresh this one, say passport, take passport. What's 3002 now? Split is not a function, it is not iterable. Task is here. Task. Okay, I'm sorry. Data. Right. So I have the title and description split in the backend. Now I'll receive it in the UI and then bind it in the UI. Right. Fine. Let's make the API call now. Heading over to my Angular application. So this is where I'm splitting it, right? So this is where I'm going to make the API call. Instead of splitting it here, I depend upon the backend, the middleware. So make API call to fetch title and description. Somebody is not on mute. Please mute yourself. To make this API call, right, you see a little bit of complication is involved here. I'm heading over to my to-do app, right? I am going to create a new service file. Very slow. One moment. Okay. I'm going to create a new service file. ng generate a service file called app. Okay. Why do we need a service file to handle this business project? We are separating that into different files instead of putting everything together and cluttering it up. Okay. I need to import a module. You will get your recording today. Yes. So the main module is imported, and in my service file, I'm going to import the client here. And there are a few concepts called as constructors and classes and objects in JavaScript. If you do not know, you should learn it. Okay, I'm going to instantiate the HTTP client here, right? And I'm going to write a function called get data, right? and this will return the API data. What is my URL? I need to copy it from here. So this is the API URL. This data alone is going to be dynamic, right? So I'm going to say, I'll call it input. Okay, I'm passing my input from the component file here, right? Moment. Let me close everything else. So here is what I need to. So I need to use a service file. That is where the API is written. So I'm going to import my service file in my component file. That's app service. And I need to write a constructor to instantiate that. Don't worry about the syntaxes. It's okay if you do not understand. You just understand the flow for now. So get data. So my input is what here? I had this dot task input. This is my text. So basically, I'm actually calling the get data method along with the input I'm passing here. This will in turn call your service files get data method. This again will make the API call to our Node.js backend we just built. It will give the response back, and that response is returned back to whoever called it. Who called it? This guy called it, right? I need to store this information somewhere. Dot subscribe. Syntaxes will be complicated. Do not worry. Let's first see what the response is. If it has an error, we need to handle the error as well. Okay, time to test. Yes, we'll rather. That's right. Let's try it out. Okay. So you can track all the API calls in the network tab here, right? Under fetch etc. Let me create my first one. I'm gonna hit enter. There we go. So API has been called, and the payload, we are actually passing this as a payload, and in the response, lovely. So Node.js is giving us back the split data, title as passport and description as secure passport. Now the next thing is head over to the console. In the console, we log the output. We need to directly push this inside the task list array. So instead of logging it to the output, I would push that into task list array. This dot task list dot push your response. That's it. This should work. Let's try again. Passport, secure your passport. Hit enter. Lovely. So basically, you're making an API call to where? You can see that I'm making an API call to this URL, right? In port number 3002, we created an API URL called process task. It is sitting inside our middleware project. See, this is the URL that we are hitting. Once we hit the URL, we are extracting the query. Query is what? After this URL, whatever you have in the URL is a query parameters. Extracting it, storing it to the data. From that, we are actually picking the task property, right? Task is what we are passing here. We are extracting the task and we are splitting that into two parts by using the pipe splitter. And then we have title and description, which is sent back to the UI as a response. If you see the response, it will have title and description from the API. We are using it and directly binding it to the task list array that will update the UI. So this is the end-to-end flow of creating a data in an enterprise application, the modern world, whatever you name it. Any questions? So we cannot handle database now. It will take another 1 hour to complete the session then. So we'll stop here for now. If you want a database session, maybe we can sit for another 1 hour tomorrow. You guys can request in the group. Based on your response, we'll arrange the session. I know this was too much to handle in a short span of time. See, you can actually contact in the group if you want. Whatever questions you have, you can post it over there. We'll respond to you. Guys, you can unmute and talk. I think I can stop the recording here. One moment.